3 days after inheriting a fortune she never knew existed, Emma Carter sat alone in a first-class cabin on a private jet flying from New York to Montana. Outside the window, endless clouds stretched across the horizon. Inside, her world was falling apart. A week earlier, she had been living a normal life. She worked long hours as an editor for a publishing company in Manhattan. Her apartment was small but comfortable. Her future seemed predictable. Then a lawyer called. The phone call lasted less than 10 minutes. By the time it ended, Emma learned that her grandmother had left her ownership of a luxury mountain lodge, several thousand acres of land, and shares in a billion-dollar family investment portfolio. The total inheritance exceeded $60 million. At first Emma thought it was a mistake. Her grandmother had lived quietly. She drove an old car. She wore simple clothes. She never talked about money. But according to the lawyer, Margaret Whitmore had once belonged to one of the wealthiest families in the western United States. For decades she had hidden her fortune from nearly everyone, including Emma. Now the entire estate belonged to her. The problem wasn't the money. The problem was the condition attached to it. Emma had to spend 6 months at the family lodge in Montana before the inheritance could officially transfer. 6 months. The idea sounded impossible. Her life was in New York. Her career was in New York. Everything she cared about was in New York. Yet here she was, flying toward a future she never wanted. The jet landed shortly after sunset. A black luxury SUV waited near the runway. The driver stepped forward. "Miss Carter." "Yes. Welcome to Montana." The drive took nearly 2 hours. As darkness settled across the countryside, Emma stared out the window. Rolling hills stretched endlessly beneath moonlight. Tall pine forests lined the roads. Mountains rose in the distance like giants guarding the horizon. The landscape felt completely different from New York. Wild, beautiful, untouched. Eventually the SUV turned through massive iron gates. Emma looked up. Her breath caught. The lodge stood on a hillside overlooking a lake. Warm lights glowed through enormous windows. The structure looked more like a luxury resort than a private residence. Stone walls, timber beams, multiple fireplaces, large balconies overlooking the water. It was breathtaking and intimidating. The driver smiled. "Welcome home." Home. The word felt strange. Emma stepped out of the vehicle. Cold mountain air filled her lungs. For the first time in years, she could hear absolute silence. No traffic, no sirens, no city noise, just wind moving through pine trees. The front door opened before she reached it. A tall woman in her 60s greeted her. "Emma." The woman's eyes immediately softened. "You look exactly like your grandmother." Emma smiled politely. "And you are Evelyn." The woman laughed. "I've managed this place for 28 years. She pulled Emma into a hug before Emma could react. "Your grandmother loved you more than anything." Emotion tightened Emma's throat. "Thank you." Evelyn guided her inside. The lodge was even more impressive than the exterior. Massive stone fireplaces, handcrafted woodwork, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Everything radiated warmth and elegance. Yet one photograph immediately caught Emma's attention. It sat above the fireplace. Her grandmother stood beside a tall man in a cowboy hat. Between them was a teenage boy. The boy couldn't have been older than 16. Strong jawline, dark hair, bright blue eyes. The kind of face people remembered. "Who's that?" Emma asked. Evelyn glanced at the photograph. A complicated expression crossed her face. "That's Lucas." "Lucas who?" "Lucas Hayes." Emma noticed the hesitation. "And?" Evelyn sighed. "That's a very long story." Before Emma could ask another question, headlights appeared outside. A black pickup truck stopped near the entrance. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. For a second Emma forgot to breathe. He was easily 6'3". Broad shoulders, dark hair, confident posture. The kind of man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers. Or movie screens. Or both. He climbed the front steps and entered the lodge. The moment his eyes met Emma's, the atmosphere changed. Something electric passed between them. Unexpected, powerful, dangerous. Neither looked away. Evelyn cleared her throat. "Lucas." The man finally broke eye contact. "Evening, Evelyn." Then he looked back at Emma. His expression remained unreadable. "So you're Emma Carter." His voice was deep and calm. Emma crossed her arms. "And you're Lucas Hayes." A faint smile appeared. "Seems we've both been properly introduced." For reasons she couldn't explain, Emma suddenly felt defensive. "Do I know you?" "No." "Then why do you sound like you know me?" Lucas studied her for a moment. "Because I've heard about you for years." That answer only created more questions. Before she could ask them, Lucas stepped closer. "Not too close. Just enough. Your grandmother was one of the most important people in my life." Emma blinked. "What does that mean?" A shadow crossed his face. "It means I owe her more than I can ever repay." Silence followed. Neither seemed willing to look away. Finally Lucas nodded toward the staircase. "You've had a long trip." Emma hated that he was right. "You should rest." She raised an eyebrow. "And you're always this bossy." For the first time, he laughed. The sound transformed his entire face. "Only when necessary." Then he turned and walked away. Emma watched him disappear down a hallway. Something about him bothered her. Not because she disliked him. Because she noticed him. And that was far more dangerous. Later that night, unable to sleep, Emma stood on the balcony outside her room. Moonlight reflected across the lake. The mountains glowed silver beneath the stars. The view was breathtaking. Yet her thoughts kept returning to Lucas Hayes. Who was he? Why had her grandmother never mentioned him? And why had everyone seemed uncomfortable discussing him? As if sensing her thoughts, movement caught her attention below. A figure stood near the lake. Lucas. He stared across the water alone. Lost in thought. For several minutes neither moved. Then Lucas looked up. Even from that distance, Emma knew he had seen her. Their eyes met again. The strange connection returned instantly. A feeling neither could explain. A feeling neither wanted. And a feeling that would soon change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Emma woke before sunrise. For a few seconds she forgot where she was. Then she saw the mountain peaks outside her window and remembered everything. The inheritance. The lodge. Lucas Hayes. The mysterious man who seemed connected to her grandmother. Sleep had done nothing to quiet her curiosity. She dressed quickly and headed downstairs. The lodge was silent. Golden morning light streamed through the massive windows, painting the wooden floors with soft shadows. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. Emma followed it. To her surprise, she wasn't alone. Lucas stood near the counter pouring coffee into a mug. He wore a dark flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The casual look somehow made him even more attractive, which immediately annoyed her. Lucas glanced over his shoulder. "Morning. Morning. You sleep okay?" "Not really." He nodded. "New places do that." Emma folded her arms. "Or maybe mysterious strangers do." A corner of his mouth lifted. "Still curious about me? You make it sound like I shouldn't be." Lucas took a sip of coffee. "You should probably eat breakfast first." Emma stared at him. "You're avoiding the question." "Maybe." His honesty caught her off guard. Before she could continue, Evelyn entered carrying a tray of cinnamon rolls. The older woman smiled. "You two already arguing?" "We're not arguing," Lucas said. "We're absolutely arguing," Emma replied. Evelyn laughed. "Good." They both looked at her. "Why is that good?" Emma asked. "Because your grandmother used to say the most interesting relationships always begin with arguments." Neither answered. For some reason, that only made Evelyn's smile wider. After breakfast, Emma decided to explore the property. The estate was enormous. Rolling fields stretched toward the mountains. Horse pastures covered the valleys. Crystal clear streams wound through forests of pine trees. It felt less like private property and more like a national park. As she walked along a trail overlooking the lake, she spotted a small building near the shoreline. Curious, she headed toward it. The structure looked old, much older than the lodge. Weathered wood covered the exterior. A rusted lock hung from the door. Emma tried the handle. Locked. She turned away, looking for something. She nearly jumped. Lucas stood several feet behind her. "Do you enjoy sneaking up on people?" "Not usually." His blue eyes moved toward the cabin. "You shouldn't go in there." Emma immediately became more interested. "Why?" "Because it's private." "Private for who?" His expression darkened. "For memories." The answer made no sense. Yet something about his tone stopped her from pushing further. "For now." They walked back toward the lodge together. Silence settled between them. Not awkward, just thoughtful. Eventually Emma spoke. "How long have you lived here?" "Most of my life. And my grandmother." Lucas looked ahead. "She saved my life." Emma stopped walking. "What?" He continued another few steps before turning around. His face had become serious. 10 years ago, I lost everything." Emma saw genuine pain behind his eyes. The kind that never completely disappears. "My father died." He paused. "Our family business collapsed." Another pause. "My mother got sick." Emma remained silent. Lucas looked toward the mountains. "There were days I didn't think I could keep going." "What happened?" "Your grandmother happened." His voice softened. "She gave me a job." Emma listened carefully. "At the lodge?" Lucas nodded. "When nobody else would." The revelation surprised her. "Grandma never told me any of this." "She wouldn't." "Why not?" "Because she didn't help people for recognition." Emma felt pride and sadness at the same time. That sounded exactly like her grandmother. Lucas continued. "She believed everyone deserved a second chance." Something about the way he said it suggested he was speaking from personal experience. As they resumed walking, Emma found herself seeing him differently. Not as an arrogant stranger. Not as a mystery. But as someone carrying invisible scars. Someone who understood loss. Someone who had survived difficult things. For the first time, She wondered what kind of man Lucas Hayes really was, and whether she wanted to find out. That evening a storm rolled across the mountains. Heavy rain hammered the lodge. Thunder shook the windows. Most guests would have found it frightening. Emma found it strangely peaceful. She sat beside the fireplace reading one of her grandmother's old journals. Many pages contained stories about the lodge, the community, the land. But one entry caught her attention. Lucas is stronger than he realizes. One day he'll become the man he was meant to be. Emma frowned. The entry was dated 8 years earlier. Clearly her grandmother had cared deeply about him. The question was why. Suddenly a folded photograph slipped from between the journal pages. Emma picked it up. Her heart skipped. The picture showed her grandmother, a teenage Lucas, and a younger version of Emma. All three stood together beside the lake. Emma stared at the image. She didn't remember taking it. Yet there she was, smiling, standing right beside Lucas. How was that possible? She rushed downstairs. Lucas stood near the fireplace speaking with Evelyn. Emma held up the photograph. What is this? The color drained from Lucas's face. Evelyn looked equally shocked. A terrible silence filled the room. Emma's pulse quickened. What aren't you telling me? Neither answered. That frightened her more than any answer could. Lucas slowly stepped forward. His expression had become unreadable. Emma, what? There are things about your past you don't remember. The room suddenly felt colder. What does that mean? Lucas looked directly into her eyes. It means we've met before. The words hit her like lightning. What? We spent an entire summer together. Emma stared at him. No, it's true. No, I would remember. Lucas's jaw tightened. You were 16, and you had an accident. The world seemed to stop. Emma's breathing slowed. What kind of accident? Nobody spoke. Fear crept into her chest. A deep instinctive fear. The kind that appears when a forgotten memory begins fighting its way back to the surface. Lucas finally answered. The kind that changed everything. And in that moment, Emma realized her grandmother's inheritance was never really about money. It was about a secret. A secret buried somewhere in her past. A secret connected to Lucas Hayes. And a secret that was finally coming back to life.